The Marcum Damage Case was scheduled to take place over a 3-week period, but it ended up lasting as long as 5 weeks, with a whole week given to closing arguments. Today, we will go over the only found arguments given by the attorneys. Commonwealth Attorney A.F. Byrd is about to lay out the plaintiff's case and lay waste the reputations of the men who were the defendants. It would take him 7 hours to go over each of the witnesses and the evidence and connect them together to show the jury that there was a den of assassins in Breathitt County. Come along with us as we take a look at the newspaper, the Mount Sterling Advocate, as they summarize Byrd's closing arguments. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine, but it convinces YouTube that we need a bigger time machine to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. Court drawing to a close. Before we dive into the pages of the Mount Sterling Advocate, we need to cover the events of the court. According to the January 6, 1905 edition of the Breathitt County News, the jury was given their instructions, and then the closing arguments were made. We could only find the statements made by A.F. Byrd, and we can guess that the reasoning behind this was because they were so sensational and made for good reading. But, according to the newspaper, after the instructions were given on Monday, then Attorney J. Smith Hayes would make an argument for the defense case that took the entire day. On Tuesday, the next day, would be a 7-hour-long argument made by Attorney A.F. Byrd. On Wednesday, Attorney Stevenson would speak on behalf of the defendants. Thursday, the arguments would be given by Attorney B. Johnette for the plaintiff and McGowan for the defendants. Friday would be the closing arguments for the plaintiff. The quotes in the remainder of this video will be taken from the Mount Sterling Advocate dated July 11, 1905. The Mount Sterling Advocate's introduction. This had turned out to be a sensational trial. Never before or since had a state senator, 2 county judges, and a sheriff been named in such a huge damage case. For the past 5 weeks in Winchester, Kentucky, in December 1904, the court of Judge Benton was turned into a scathing report of the justice system of Breathitt County. The evidence portion of the trial was now over, and it was time for the closing arguments to begin. Quote, A.F. Byrd declares that the courthouse of Breathitt is a temple of injustice and a clearinghouse for assassination. At Winchester on Tuesday of last week, A.F. Byrd, counsel for Mrs. Marcum in her damage suit, spoke for 7 hours. Picture the man standing at the courthouse door at Jackson when the deadly bullet from the assassin's revolver stilled his voice forever. The building, said Mr. Byrd, where Marcum was so foully murdered, was built to be used as a temple of justice. But since the defendants had come into political power in that county, it had been used as a temple of injustice and a, quote, clearinghouse for assassination, unquote. As we can see, Byrd was not going to shy away from his assessment of the men involved in both the murder of Attorney Marcum, but also in their treatment of the political climate in Breathitt County. Instead of being servants to the county, the men chose to use their positions for power over the people of the county, and those that dared to object were eliminated. Fort Hargis. From this point, Attorney Byrd would go on to describe the assassination and how that there was a den of assassins now in Breathitt County posing as officers of the court, that there was a plot that would play out for the death of Attorney J.B. Marcum, and that he was deemed to die by those that were overseers of the den of depravity. Quote, the speaker painted a picture for the jury, showing the man standing in the front door of that building on that fateful morning, while on the opposite side of the street, in what the speaker designated as, quote, Fort Hargis, unquote, a council was held in which it was decided that the last day on earth for J.B. Marcum had arrived, and that while Curtis Jett and Tom White went forth to perform their duties for which, he said, they had been engaged, James Hargis and Ed Callahan, one the county judge and the other the sheriff, stood just within and anxiously listened for the crack of the revolver of one or both of the assassins that would make the man so bitterly hated bite the dust. Unquote. So according to Byrd, even though the defendants had not fired a single shot at Marcum themselves, they were in close enough proximity to the deed to be able to hear the shot to end the man that they were awaiting to eliminate from the power plays, that they might as well have done the killing themselves. A question of justice. Not finished with the defendants yet, Byrd asked the very question that many of the people had been asking for a very long time. Where was the Lady of Justice when it came to the court system of Breathitt County? Quote, the people may ask, unquote, said Mr. Byrd, quote, why some criminal action was not taken against these defendants in Breathitt County. But that can easily be answered by reference to their own statements that they control the courts and state officials, and by the boast defy any action against them. Unquote. One of the most scathing of the testimonies was given by Mrs. Rebecca Bailey, that even stated in her own testimony that Hargis bragged about the fact that he was friends with the governor of the state of Kentucky, and that he could basically do as he wished in Breathitt County because of that fact, that he would never be touched by a court because of his political connections. Byrd laments. It is a very bad thing when a Commonwealth Attorney laments a case, but it is even more terrible that this lament would be on account that the defendants were also officers of the court. Quote, Mr. Byrd said that when J.B. Marcum was shot down in the courthouse door at Jackson, he, Byrd, had the fortune, or misfortune, he did not know which, to be Commonwealth's attorney of the judicial district of which Jackson and Breathitt County was a part. He said that when he first began the legal investigation of that murder, every means had been used by these defendants to defeat him in his duty, and to keep the law from dealing out justice to the men who, he said, had acted as their agents in the assassination of J.B. Marcum. Unquote. This needs to be said. Mr. Byrd is not in any way to be seen as giving any political statements against the Democratic Party in the state of Kentucky during this time. He is, however, giving statements that these defendants used both legal and political means available to them to try to thwart justice. He would go on to add the following statement, quote, the defendant, Jim Hargis, goes before the jury, unquote, said Mr. Byrd, quote, and boasts of the fact that he is county judge of his county, and a member of the Democratic State Central Committee from his district, and in every way that was possible has injected politics in this case for the purpose of showing that he has the confidence of the people of his party throughout the state, unquote. But the very fact, said the speaker, that he is a member of the Democratic State Central Committee, he threw a shame on that body, unquote. So, as we can see, Mr. Byrd was stating that the actions of the Hargis brothers, Callahan, and French were bringing down the reputation of the Democratic Party by their actions, that it was not the party itself that was at fault, but the men themselves, and by the men dragging their political party into the defense of those actions, they were bringing shame upon everyone that was affiliated with the party in 1904. Who to believe? In his last statement to the jury, Kentucky Commonwealth Attorney Byrd asked this question, who do you believe, and why? Quote, believe the testimony of the defendants, said Mr. Byrd, and they are entitled to be called Judge Hargis, Senator Hargis, Judge French, and Sheriff Callahan. But believe the evidence that has been produced by the plaintiffs in the case with the, quote, witnesses who were not enticed away, unquote, and they may be called conspirators, unquote. And so, we are asked the same question as we sit in our chairs as the 13th juror. Which side do we believe was telling the truth of this matter? Were the defendants innocent or guilty of the crimes that had been laid in the court of Judge Benton during the winter term of 1904 through 1905? The final observation. The Mount Sterling advocate makes one last observation of the people who were sitting in the courtroom during this trial. Every day, the courtroom was packed with people who witnessed all of the evidence given to the jury. This is their opinion about how Kentucky Commonwealth Attorney did during his 7-hour-long argument in the case. Quote, his bitter arraignment of James and Alex Hargis, Ed Callahan, and B.F. French, the 4 defendants in the Marcum Damage suit, was by many believed to be more severe than his speech to the jury which convicted Curtis Jett and Tom White for the assassination of Marcum, unquote. In next week's video, we will cover the verdict and the appeals process, and what Judge Benton did after the trial that made the defendants go on to separate trials for criminal charges in this and previous cases. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian feuds. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.